Increasingly, I keep hearing people call the FAQ a FAQ. It bothers me. I don't know why.
I mean, no, I think
what do you guys call it?
I used to call them facts until I realized that people they thought I was talking about a fax machine. They're like, yo, can we fix the fax on the website? And they're like, what, the fax phone number, like the number to fax us documents? I'm like, no, the FAQs. They're like, oh, just call them FAQs. And so
that's hilarious. Like, I thought you were going to say something completely different. That really caught me off guard.
Which, if that's that type of fax, and I say faxes, now I sound like Gollum.
Yep.
My precious faxes.
Silly hobbits. Hey everybody, it's the Data Driven Marketer, sponsored by NetWise. I'm Adam.
I'm Brian.
I'm Mark.
Welcome back for another hang in the data basement. Down in the data basement? I don't know. We just had a ridiculous semantic argument on our Slack about if you're in or down in or how exactly we should. We spent way too long workshopping.
What's up? Down in the data basement.
The introduction. Anyway.
I also have imagined the data basement as one word this whole time, and seeing you type it out as two words was kind of disappointing to me.
I'm not sure. Yeah. I don't know. We have talked about this one at length. I'm not committed to one or the other, but anyway, thanks for joining us, and special thanks to our guest this week, Mark Richardson, or as I've known him my whole life, Dickie. He is. What is your title at our company?
My title. It's program manager and senior program manager,
right?
Which I got that title at my last job, and I realized they had paid media attached to it. But I realized that with such a kind of generic title, I was getting way less annoying emails and stuff from people trying to sell me shit. I was like, oh, if they can't tell I'm in growth or like, digital marketing, if you just take the
then
digital
they don't
marketing,
try to sell you the platforms for, that's actually brilliant.
So you don't accidentally market to yourself.
Right.
As you might be able to tell from the tone of the podcast thus far, Mark is also works with us at NetWise. He's a NetWise team member. So another episode with somebody in the house talking about what we do over here. Mark actually just recently joined, although Brian and I have worked with him on various projects throughout the last 15 years. So you also probably hear that in the tone of the conversation thus far.
Friends.
But it's an awesome example of the work your network thing, but also just an example of having a network in which you're still just like, hey, I know a guy who's a manifest expert on this because we have learned about it together the whole time that this technology has been evolving. And yeah, I think that's ultimately what we're here to talk about, but more specifically, so program manager. But what are you actually overseeing day to day?
So what that means, what I actually do, is
what do you actually do?
is make sure our marketing budget, right, in between doing like matrix backbends to avoid the sales in-mails, as I know we probably all are as marketers. I realized that program manager is just boring enough of a title to keep me under the radar from other marketers like me, which is kind of nice. Ultimately, I'm doing growth hacking, media budget deployment management, as well as ad writing and A/B testing, which all of that kind of clusters into it what I would call audience development. Certainly at this stage,
right.
It's taking assumptions, taking what you know about your product, and putting those into marketing materials and resources for people to react to. And ideally, the people who are reacting to them, we've targeted with some level of intelligence. So
right.
that's kind of been my evolution through this whole space. We started at One Step, the production company. And SEO, it wasn't really about paid media at the time. It was all organic. We weren't running any ads or anything. It was all just,
right.
We're building content, building some links, running blogs and videos and live streams. And It was all, it was kind of all digital engagement, digital relationship building.
Yes, you mentioned SEO in that context. And in terms of the breakdown on our marketing team at NetWise, you are the closest to what I think everyone is thinking about when they say data in this context, like every day. You are a full knee deeper than I am in the data every day. That is, I think, what people are thinking about when they say this. Like, you're the one looking at audiences, manipulating keywords, like assessing incoming signals and using those to make decisions regarding where we target this and that and another thing. And it's really like you're working the most granular set of levers.
Yeah, you're deep in the basement.
Do stuff with the data.
That's right. I am.
You're in like the crawl space sometimes.
I'm in the crawl space. Yeah.
What do they call them on like starships?
Oh, the
Jerry tubes or something like that.
The ship's hold? No. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about
specifically on Star Trek. What do they call it?
No, specifically on Star Trek, they have a name for those tubes that occasionally like engineering has to climb into to fix a panel or something. And they're like just small enough to still be a little cozy, but not like
great for drama chases and
really
stuff.
Claustrophobic. Yeah, you need chases, but also sometimes you need 3 people in there at once, and it can't be too like you got to and 2 cameras.
That's actually really good. That's a great analogy or like a metaphor for being in an ad platform. It's like I want no more than maybe 1 or 2 other people besides me in this platform at any given time. It's like I'm not the guy who's like, let me take you on a tour of Google Ads, because to explain all of the things that you're going to get distracted by, and I say you, meaning the client or a boss, really. It's like if you're not intimately familiar and researching or educated on what any of these screens mean, like you're going to ask so many questions and we're just going to waste our time, so it does feel kind of like a crawl space. I know exactly what I'm looking for. Let me crawl there and then come get you the answer in the living room once I'm done.
A common theme that Adam and I have hit. Do I call you Adam on this podcast?
I don't know.
No, anyway, Kerp, right?
Kyle called me Kerpelman, and I'm sure everybody.
I get real confused at work because it's a big crossover for me. Still having you in profession, day job and hobby time.
I mean, I sign all my work emails Kerp too. So
okay, it's Kerp then. So one of the themes Kerp and I keep hitting on here is how similar modern digital marketing is to software engineering. And on some levels, you're actually writing software too, right? There's a lot of code that's needed to make things work, but like the project management and the depth of the complexity of what you're looking at and the analysis and the program management and execution, there's just stuff structured similarly. Projects are handled similarly. It's just an extraordinarily technical profession now. And like your example of not needing people to look at like Google Analytics or looking into the AdSense account is kind of the same as like sitting down for a high level meeting and everyone pulling out their code and starting to read through the code line by line. Yep. It's like, that's not going to go anywhere.
Exactly. Then you're just going to, your whole meeting's going to be.
There's only a very specific context in which you want the CEO involved in a code audit.
Very specific.
I would say they're very similar in that
that's the last meeting our CEO wants to be in.
For sure. I think we should start back at kind of your background and stuff, and basically let's track through the evolution of this stuff in terms of what you and I have always been working on, which is kind of creative marketing, sort of targeting for this kind of stuff. But like, let's also step further back, because I realize I haven't revealed yet that you may also be doing hosting duties for this podcast. So anybody hanging out here and listening, also get used to Mark's sexy NPR microphone voice. He might
be here for you
in my role on occasion. But even before that, we should talk about, you studied drama in undergrad, right?
Well, yeah, that's kind of my whole thing.
I should say for context, like I came up through filmmaking and went to an MFA program that I then dropped out of, and now here I am in marketing. But even before that, I studied philosophy, and I frequently mention how that aspect of the route up that was sort of indirect is it's a part of my brain I still access on a regular basis as I try to figure out what a strategy is or where a technology is going or like where the cheap attention real estate is going to be as media evolves, that kind of stuff. Because that is not, you don't learn media evolution in an MBA. Certainly not in law school.
I love that Brian compared it to engineering because there's like, I look at this landscape as there's kind of two sets of players in marketing. It's like the people who are out there failing forward, testing, doing crazy shit, innovating a platform. We don't even know why. Why are we putting video together in these tiny little 3-second edits back to back? Okay. And then all of a sudden people are like, how do we monetize this? There's like, you've got the people out there taking the risks, creating the content and just doing it. They're not thinking about, is there ROI? Am I selling? Am I gaining clout? Yada, yada. They're just out there entertaining people, right? They're just putting content out there because they love failing forward. And then there's people, up in the C-suite going, what's this trend? What's everybody doing? Everyone's getting excited. And so they hire, people like us, smart people who are also creative to kind of make sense of it. It's like, what's this thing that everyone's getting triggered by, everyone's reacting to, everyone's laughing at, whatever, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or Vine, I think that what an MBA can't necessarily do. It can give you the macro, it can give you historical, and it can give you the tools to assess, obviously from like a business perspective, what's going on, but it can't give you that inspirato, that like a filmmaker or I would say like an actor might have. Like you were like, let's just jump in and do it. Let's take an idea, do something, see what happens. There's kind of,
sometimes you just got to run the scene and go, nah, that was trash. Thanks guys though. And go rewrite it.
Right. Like, you're like, okay, that failed miserably, but hey, we did something.
I think comedians end up really good. It's why I think the first wave of influencers in podcasts has been comedians. They're used to going out and iteratively testing spoken word.
Right.
That's stand-up comedy, right? You hit the road, you grind it out. Everybody has stories about bombs that then evolve into better jokes, and you just can't. That's the only way to refine jokes. I mean, there is science to it, and you can line up all the blocks, but then occasionally a thing works and you go, I don't know what magic happened, but I did the best I could to stack the deck. But the last little piece, that's this sort of magic. That's why we give out Academy Awards, because the people that can repeat it actually have something very special.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to articulate what it is. But yeah, so I mean, that actually relates to a thing that I say constantly that's kind of like big time oft repeated for me marketing advice. And I have, throughout a 15-year career, always been stunned that this never becomes an irrelevant thing to say to the people that are paying me money. Don't disrespect what the kids are doing. You may not understand it, but if they're doing it, it's more fun than what you're doing. And so it's going to be the future. It just is, especially with the two-way communication channel open now where they're actively playing a video game instead of just watching TV.
Are you trying to tell me that the younger generations aren't just a bunch of losers?
How about, I mean, they discovered the Beatles first.
Isn't that trope like
they discovered Elvis first?
So old now. How do older generations still fall victim to what are the kids doing? They're all messed up. They're
must be stupid. Right.
Like I'm
you
not
don't remember
the young generation anymore. When does that flip in my head? And I'm like, oh, my kid's so dumb and what he does is so silly. What's he involved in? I'm like, well, I'll be all right.
I have a theory. I have a theory that I think I can legitimately back up, that millennials onward, and I would say that we're kind of elder millennial. I grew up at this point with most of my life in the digital sphere, but the first 15, 16, 17 years weren't really. Like, I asked girls out via instant messenger in high school. That about level
ICQ, baby.
For digital technology being legit in my life. Like, I took that seriously. It's how I got dates. But also, that's evolved to GChat, and then we saw email, and just the way we talk to everyone else in our cohort has changed every 3 years, our entire lives.
Yep. Yeah, you were talking
It's
about this
sort
on
of stabilized,
LinkedIn.
but now we got Slack. Let's back it up. The first thing that you and I worked on together was my student film in which you played the lead.
That's
and
right.
Constantine, who was the CTO at one of my startups later down the road and also worked at the production company, was the producer of that student film.
Yeah, drawing Lisa.
I could surface it if anyone cared, but it's funny because half of it's not there, because half of it was supposed to be hand-drawn animation, and I had somebody that was super fired up to do it, who then got hired and was like, sorry, I got to go do the paid thing. So I just filled in those slots with literally like rudimentary animation of the storyboards I'd drawn out for the framing of the cameras. So I could put it on like a portfolio reel.
Yeah, that's
all the live action
show
stuff
me that.
Was beautiful though. We both ended up in LA a few years later, and so you came to work with me at a video production company, which is really where we started using. We were successfully making enough money off of client work that there was budget overrun to work on crazy stuff, and so a lot of the stuff that you talked about was kind of like we'd have bands come through to talk to us about music videos, and we shot a live streaming show out of the back of the office where they would just play a couple songs and talk about the music, stuff like that we streamed on.
We'd stream
now defunct platform, live stream, Ustream.
Yeah,
like
live
that.
stream, and we put it out on YouTube as well. Yeah, early days.
Music Mayhem.
Movies, Music Mayhem. Yeah,
that was the like side project of One Step Productions.
Yeah, I remember.
We got Mike Doty came on.
Yeah, I was there for his Structure Friday, I think.
Yeah, we had a few of those that. Anyway, so
no
Mark
one
hosted
give
there.
A shit about any of the stuff we're talking about on this episode.
No, who cares? Whatever. It's just as much for us and the people there. We also tried to do podcasts with you, Jones.
Yeah, I remember
which
doing.
Means I probably have a recording somewhere of me being frustrated at you for not yes-anding properly.
Well, wasn't my my background quite as much as yours.
Takes practice, to be certain. But in addition to that stuff, you kind of handled the whole promotional side of all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, for all these projects, and we had legit projects that like a documentary we took to Cannes, like stuff like that, where we'd be making websites and running ads and doing all this kind of stuff. And again, at the edge of technology, if you're trying to push a web series, the best place to go advertise is a place where people are already on the web. So we have a couple different web series we did while we were working together there. And yeah, like this is before there was barely an idea of SEO. This was like 2006, 2007. I feel like.
Yeah, this was when it was Wild West. I mean, it's still kind of Wild West, but this is when it was really, really crazy. When you could still get away with stuff like keyword cloaking in your background, doorway pages, all this, fun, manipulative shit.
Yeah. So that's another funny thing that I don't know that, like, depending on the age or experience of the people listening to this, I don't know if people realize there was a phase of the web where you could game getting your page ranked somewhere like Google by taking a giant cluster of keywords, making the same color as your background and putting them at the bottom of your page.
Yep. Or in the sides, in the margins worked. You would slap it in the margins and just
and then eventually you could just put it in meta density. And it would get crawled, but not, and there were like, SEO has always been this really interesting, like now it's evolved to what we call data-driven marketing and it's legitimized. But when we first started, it was like, oh, let's see if this worked. And every once in a while, Google would call us and go, you shouldn't do that. You're going to get blocked. You're going to get locked out of our ad system.
Yeah. It's almost like, it's like hackers fighting hackers, really. That's the way I think about it. People have this image of Google now as a behemoth, as like a god force, right? Like we look to Google as the end all be all. Oh, they call him the Goog father. It's like Google will determine, what is right and wrong and your place in the multiverse of digital. You have but before it was really like they were just trying to compete and with other search engines too, which was, other engineers, other developers, other hackers trying to come up with the best listing system. And that's all. I mean, it was like everyone just trying to create a digital yellow pages, which we still get searches for that now. Like here's a little NDA. We're still pulling in people to NetWise searching yellow page online. And you look at it, I'm like, what are we in 1998? Like how people are still thinking in that way.
How is this person getting on the internet?
Right.
Right.
Like how'd you figure out how to verify an email? How did you change a password? Like you're searching yellow page.
Right.
It just blows my mind.
So like this is the part, Brian, we've talked about this on other podcasts before, so I know you can sum this one up quick. Before Google invented PageRank, which caused them to really with PageRank, they were like, we just figured out how the net organizes itself, and now we can map it and give you the best answers for everything, at least relative to the technology at the time. What do we have before that?
You mostly just had self-contained contextual search. So I'm sure there was some more complexity than this, but the general idea was before the idea of PageRank, really, you just had the page itself to go off of. So if you searched for, I don't know, penicillin, right? It can only look at all the pages that have penicillin. You're like, I don't know which one the person wants. There are 100,000 of them. Well, these days it would be 10 million of them, right? So Google had the idea of what do the other pages think is the most important page. So it's like they layered both the context of what you were searching with like a ranking algorithm for which of those things is most likely to be relevant for the context you're searching for.
And this is why they ultimately were able to capture that position as the Goog father, as this all-knowing Buddha
for sure
of the internet, because they were taking this open source thing that we were all like, yeah, we can all, it's this big community. Again, we talk about communities, right? Like that's what the internet was. We're all feeding our information, we're feeding our facts, and this was before disinformation and fake news ruined everything. But it was this place where everyone could kind of feed off the collective intelligence of the rest of the community, and so Google was the one they elevated because they were able to figure out a script, an algorithm that properly credited all of that interaction.
If you want a really good traumatized version of this period of the evolution of this, the 4th season of *Halt and Catch Fire*
is so good.
Is
love
what
that show.
*Halt and Catch*.
*Halt and Catch Fire*.
Okay,
It's like the only show that I aggressively push on other people in the world.
It was the best. I loved it.
It's such a good show.
Okay, well,
all 4 seasons, but the 4th season covers this part of the evolution of all this stuff. But it was just lists. It was just indexes. It was like, okay, we're going to do the yellow pages again. And Yahoo jumped out ahead because they immediately started employing a lot of people to curate stuff. And that's not how you scale this, because you immediately hit the point where you're like, oh, this is more complex than you can ever just throw humans at, because there's so much data. And that's how you eventually get to the emergence of, I think, what we talk about on here, the data-driven mindset, where it really starts to filter back into everything that you do. And I think that's a little bit how you and I have been living our sort of creative lives forever. So I've forever been involved in these creative brainstorms where, like sometimes I'm on a project and the point is you're supposed to come up with the best idea and then present it, which is what it's like being at a marketing agency. Working at the edge of this stuff, every creative conversation you and I have ever had has ended in, well, let's try these 5 and see what happens. Because you get feedback, you get views on YouTube, and you go, oh, that worked.
You test, and if the test failed, then you ask yourself, okay, should we create a better test? Why did that fail? Was there anything successful about it? If so, try to iterate off of those successful factors, and if it's just a bad idea, sometimes you just throw your hands up and say, okay, time for a new idea.
And the exciting part and the fun part and the functional part is you can do that really fast now, right? Once you've got the foundation of how you're going to operate a marketing department, you can start to test things just like blindingly fast, right? I mean, some things still you need weeks and you need months to get like real big strategic business decisions, but to be able to get going on things and start to learn a lot is days and weeks now, which is insanity.
Yeah, it's almost like you're getting almost a real-time response. And a lot of platforms you are getting a real-time response. I think that's why streaming, why you see, a lot of creators and what we would call influencers nowadays. There's a big crossover, I would say, between the creator and influencer space, because you got guys that are taking a subject matter expertise and really, kind of creating a Venn diagram of key channels. They're taking the live aspect from Twitch, pushing it into a YouTube where the content can be syndicated essentially and live evergreen. And then they got the Patreon, where if you really like the content, you come onto the Patreon and you pay them extra money, in addition to their ad
to assure the persistence of your beloved project. It's it makes sense when you break down how people actually want to behave toward the content that they consume. And that way, that's in part how they want to behave, because you can watch it happen with music as music got digitized. Well, I am happy to pay for the music I love in my life. Just not $20 for one song, because there's 11 trash singles on there that the company didn't put much work into, because they
one album, exactly,
because they choked the means of distribution off at the level of physical plastic. I've thought about this one a lot. What's the first like influencer you can think of that?
Oh wow!
That caused you to be like, okay, this is a different thing right here than we've known before.
Well, I would probably say I'm going to give a very boring answer to that, and just because it connects to SEO, the first influencer I would probably say is Matt Cutts from Google.
Interesting.
He's the first person I felt influenced by. But it wasn't to buy anything. You know what I mean? It was just, he created Safe Search, which also helped elevate Google after PageRank, and made it less porn focused than the other search engines. So Cutts was like, if he, you're trying to learn the basics of good content marketing and website construction, Cutts was the guy. I would, and he's now working for the government. He works for the Cyber Command now.
Yeah, was he out there talking about it though? Like, do you know about him because you were also consuming
his blog
content?
Is how I was consuming him.
His
blog, feed reader, I think, because he was the only source of like what was going on in Google for SEO. Right, he was it was like the day to day. I wouldn't have even thought of it as influencing really at the time, right? Because I don't even remember if he was sharing on like Facebook and Twitter. Twitter was just new, so he just had a blog that he was. Here's what's going on this week and how Google was making decisions about SEO, and it was really it was a time period where he was just revealing information that he was leading projects he was working on that was just helpful to get out to people, as opposed to the idea of like, here's a bunch of stuff, buy my thing, right? It was like the true nature of how everyone like dreams the internet's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. It's truly altruistic. Exactly. Yeah. It's like, here's your problem. Like, I understand you've got a problem. We're creating stuff on our side, and we know it's slightly opaque.
Yeah.
Let me help demystify it.
And he was doing what businesses are supposed to be doing, right? They were transparent. He was telling you what a really critical part of their business, right, that affects everyone in the world. He was telling you what was going on. I'm sure there was oversight on what he could reveal too, right? There were limits. He would say things like, I can't tell you more about this algorithm or whatever, but that's what we're supposed to be doing, is educating people.
Yeah, he would be notoriously cagey, certain things.
I don't know if this docks me some nerd cred, but I didn't follow that blog. Didn't know about it. No one told me about it. There was no good discovery mechanism. But you two were way more so in spaces where actually knowing what's happening with the algorithm was really important.
Yeah, I needed it. It was like my first engineering resource for me.
Yeah. My first, I would say Kevin Smith, probably. And I was like a member on the message boards on like his View Askew website that went along with Clerks and Mallrats and Chasing It. Like he was doing this behavior before social media was even invented. He used to hang out on the message board for his movies and just talk to his fans about the same nerdy shit that the characters all loved and that he loved and that brought everybody together. And he has only increasingly, as influencer culture has like blossomed, continued to be his own property, almost distinct from the things that he makes. I mean, for a while it was distinct, and now it's pulled back even more, where he just has a self-sustaining ecosystem of people that he influences who fund him making silly movies that they watch and give him enough money to keep making the movies and doing what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Super interesting. And yeah, the podcast, I mean, he was out in front with podcasts and stuff
way
too.
out in front there. Yeah.
But there's another example that we also talked about before this that I think was for all of us one of those times when the future of all this stuff crystallized, and it was Tim Ferriss, who you could call an influencer in his own right, talked about how he picked the name for the 4-hour work week. That was really in that space of sort of like, okay, I don't know if I bought the message of the 4-hour work week. I certainly, as a marketer, understand why it's an attractive property to learn how to only work 4 hours a week. But he is a master marketer. And he talks about how he A/B tested, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever, tested the title for 4-hour work week just by running Google ads with all 13 options and having them go to like a sign up and we'll tell you when it's ready page, which this is like best practice behavior now. But at the time, it caused me to go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is not even what I thought it was. And that's really like the birth of the data-driven mindset, was that moment of going, oh no, you can use this to ask questions. And people will tell you what they want. And you don't have to sit in a room anymore and go, I wonder what these people want. I hope I strike gold.
Or like getting them together in a focus group, right?
Yeah,
you don't have to like
paying them to be
research.
in a room in donuts and then asking them 12 questions.
Now, what is this? How does this affect you? Are you happy about this image? Does this image make you confused? Like, no, people aren't people aren't going through that checklist of their anxieties, emotions, desires, and problems they need solved in that moment feel like, of clicking honestly, or watching an ad. They're not doing that. They're just reacting.
And I think honestly, below a certain age of marketers out there now, people may not even believe that behavior actually happens. Like when I first moved to LA, outside of almost every movie, there'd be somebody targeting you based on knowing that you probably left one of 5 movies recently based on the times. And they would hang out on the sidewalk and invite you to free screenings of upcoming movies, which sounded exciting because you're already seeing the ads for them and stuff. And you're like, I'll see Transformers early, but then you have to fill out a questionnaire at the end of it. And it's literal market. Like they're testing the edit to see if the sad ending makes you feel a different way about the movie than the happy ending. And then they plug in one or the other and and it never guides good creative decisions.
It's this big game of a big game of telephone, and that's So man, that's.
But yeah, so
Hollywood rabbit hole. That's a whole podcast topic itself. My goodness.
So A/B testing and that kind of stuff. What? Here's another question. Maybe this is a good place to wrap it up in terms of just bringing it to the even further future, what's the secret sauce for the data-driven, market that's 20 minutes away from here? But I think the fun way to attack it, what's the thing that when we used to talk about this stuff 10 years ago, we thought might exist that still does not work properly? Turned out to be a harder problem than we thought when the internet was invented. We can point this tool at everything.
Yeah. I mean, we certainly didn't anticipate the need for 7 different tools to get a set of answers, we have the ad tech, MarTech industry has just exploded over all the little questions that people are asking. You know what I mean? It's not enough, as we know, it's not enough to get a lead in the door. Now we have to know how that lead was acquired, what pieces of content did they consume, what competitor websites. And now you've got companies that are pulling in all that intelligence to understand not only not just SEO, it's SEM, it's UX. All of those things go into your conversion funnel now, and you can't. And if you have a talent drain or a gap in any of those areas, that could be a pain point. That could be you could be losing a customer based on they had a red CTA and I like clicking on green CTA. So that's what people are A/B testing, because just what you said, they're asking you, what do you like? How do you like to experience a website? How do you like to have your questions or problems solved? And that's, now we have this plethora of Segment and Braze and Branch and everybody, all these companies out, MuleSoft and data warehouses, all it's an endless rabbit hole of technologies to get these really granular answers to make sure people aren't wasting money.
Right. So, like, if I can repeat what I think you're saying there, you thought it would still be one dashboard.
Right.
And it's turned out that, like, you need a whole workshop of tools, which probably we should look at the real world and be like, there is no workshop that is only 2 tools. But somehow we thought it would be so streamlined, and it's like, no. And this, it goes back to a thing that we talk about all the time on here, which is that everything that software eats, it just creates more jobs because everything just fractalizes and breaks off into 100 new versions of a job that you can have. And because a layer of complexity and so the idea of like, automation makes, on one end, it makes some set of jobs go away, but on the other end, it almost always creates more jobs for a different set of people that are not always the same set, which is a problem.
Never, because it creates more complex jobs is what we're chasing. That seems to be so challenging as a world.
Yeah.
And sort of related to this is the thing that I would call out as the thing that like I thought would work and still isn't. Actually, I have 2. So I can fill in one for you, Brian, if you don't have anything top of mind.
I'm trying to think of one here.
Sentiment analysis. There have from the beginning been projects that are like, we're going to listen to Twitter and we're going to tell people how people feel about your brand. And that shit still doesn't work. And there are still giant companies trying to sell it to me. And it's always like the signal you get off it is meh at best. Like, it's because there's just too much weirdness in human language. Like, I think maybe in 10 years we get there now that ML and AI are sort of working. But the idea that like Brian and I could build it on a weekend 10 years ago, no, not effectively.
Yeah, it's just the problem with a lot of stuff like that is that we think as humans that the way we do things is like a smart way that results in critical decision making being based on important facts. But what you realize when you start to do that stuff with a computer is that humans are mostly making dumb decisions based on little tiny trinkets of information, and we just feel like we're making smart decisions. So it's really an access to information problem. I've got mine.
Do you have one?
Yeah, mine's the fact that the little bars on your phone still don't really tell you if you have any internet signal.
Is that because they keep rolling out new tower technology? So like the scale of how you can possibly even measure that radio signal keeps changing because they're like, it's ultra microwaves now.
I'm in the process of upgrading my Wi-Fi routers around my house to what I think are supposed to be like the best ones right now. And I've been doing a bunch of research into like what software to run and like what to measure to test the quality of Wi-Fi in different areas. And like everything, there's like nothing around. I can't find anything that's like
not a fixed problem. Yeah.
And it seems
that's
actually
partially
that, like,
because
Apple blocks you from accessing that level of information on their phones. So you can't build apps. Some of it is that.
But I'll say over on the PC side, where I still pay attention, even though I prefer Macs,
gross.
It's still not solved. There are a whole bunch of ways to, but part of the problem is they keep rolling out standards. So like Wi-Fi 6 is out now, completely changed the standard for the radio design and how like packet handling works and all kinds of stuff like that to make it potentially faster at the upper threshold. But it means all the hardware cascading down is obsolete. So those radios literally can't tell as well, I think, if like to answer the question. That's kind of what I was saying is like, I think tower mismatch between radio technologies is frequently the reason those bars are. But it is a good example of a thing that's like, come on, it seems like this should be easy. Just tell me if my shit is good or not.
Like, do I have a signal or don't I?
Right.
Like, and if I do,
why can't my app tell if I have a signal or not? It'll just sit there trying to load. It should say I don't have enough signal.
Why are you telling me I'm offline when I can see 3 bars Verizon in the top left corner?
Because what's missing is its ability to talk to the thing that tells it if it has signal or not.
Oh my gosh.
Systems design. Anyway, my last one was what I think these days they would call transmedia. Has still not gotten the place that we tried to make it as early as like 2009. We did a web series where all of the characters had Twitter accounts and had conversations between one another in between episodes and stuff like that. And it turns out the people's appetite for that is more like they'd rather watch real J-Lo talk to real Ben Affleck, and then they both just continue to play characters in movies that don't exist, except where video games, right? So video games have become even more immersive, but at the same time, we haven't tried to make a TV show where there is this secondary connected transmedia associated with it that could possibly even do choose your own adventure things. I thought the world that I was used to consuming, TV and movies and stuff like that, would be way more choose your own adventure than we have so far. There's a couple novel projects, and I guess you could argue that picking the streaming...
Black Mirror. Yeah, the Black Mirror.
Yeah. I guess you could argue that picking your streaming provider is sort of how you do this, and that sort of has fractalized into you could go and watch only football games if you wanted by picking the right channel.
Yeah, it's kind of a la carte connected TV universe that's rolled out for us.
But like I always say, some version of that still exists. And so thinking about the world that way is how I find the nuggets inside of what exists, where you can see how TikTok is a two-way street. It's just not what I imagined for Transmedia when we were working on that particular project.
Yeah, talk about distraction factory.
That's powerful. That one's real powerful.
I guess my answer to this would be something like, and I could be wrong. If they're doing it differently, I'm actually looking it up right now to make sure I'm not a fuddy-duddy behind the curve. But I was thinking of Nielsen, the way people report, why you report your viewership. It was all manual survey. Right. The way people, you get a phone call.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. It's literally it evolved from you fill out a Scantron with a piece of paper into phone calls, but you still had to opt into it and get a gift certificate or something, to TikTok tapping to like a video. Not really any different.
Exactly. Now, I mean, Nielsen one is I don't think they have really updated their technology that much, so they can tell based on, you can't really cookie a TV, but you think you should be able to cookie a TV.
User experience, though.
Mm-hmm.
They have all kinds of UX data on their reports website. Yeah, so maybe I'll probably edit this part out. Maybe a fun way to wrap this up is I have my, I don't even want to call it a hot take at this point. I think I know why TikTok is the way that it is, if you want to hear it.
Of course, everybody wants to hear it.
I do.
It's a fundamental combination of two aspects of their media discovery feed that are different from the other things that even Vine. So first, all of the social networks that we're used to now, YouTube included, you follow people at the account level, and that's how they get into your feed. You invite them, you say, okay, I'm following you. You can put your stuff in my subscription feed. TikTok doesn't have that. The main thing, I mean, you can follow people and then they get favored in the algorithm, but the main thing in TikTok is just the For You page, where they just stream you 60-second videos they think you'll enjoy based on the algorithm, and there isn't another way to consume. I mean, you can load into the following tab, but it ends up being a similar experience because it's all people that you followed who were first shown to you through the For You page. So the first thing is, they don't have you tethered to actually knowing an influencer necessarily to control whether you see something or not. Then that gives them the power to only actually surface stuff that's good. So as a creator, it's really low stakes, because if you put out something that sucks, 5 people see it, and then it dies in the algorithm, and
it's like Snapchat, just goes away.
It's not like YouTube where people go back through the channel and go, oh, no, I don't actually like what you make, except that one viral video. I'm not subscribing. All they do is like the one video, and it informs the algorithm. And if you're actually good at making things over and over, even though some of it is crap, you get served back up, right?
That removes a lot of anxiety for the creator, because there's so much pressure to make sure everything you do in an environment where you're being followed directly is good. That
the
sucks.
perfectionism.
That eliminates creativity big time.
And so it's
Instagram
almost
feeds all look the same to me.
Yeah, because that media stream has standardized around what's effective on there. The same way pop music to some degree standardizes in cycles around what people want to hear. Pop music is literally just an algorithm for finding on an ongoing basis what is pleasing to the human ear this year.
Yeah.
Or for the next 5-ish years.
It's funny. No, you bring up music. Yeah, music. That's talk about a trending space. Yeah, where there's so much copycat. It's like Billie Eilish drops her debut album, and now you got 7 other teenagers or 20 somethings who sound a lot like Billie Eilish. Doing
Billie
this
Eilish-ish
sort of thing, this ASMR dubstep crossover thing. You got Olivia Rodrigo, you've got Julian Baker, you got great artists, but they're all kind of following Billie Eilish.
And I mean, and part of it is just an influence cycle, like the reason you get synths that come in and out of popularity is because we grew up with synths. So I'm like, oh, that sounds like the Cars or whatever. And but anyway, that's
part of that too. Is that part of that? A lot of music is cyclical, and culture is cyclical, and trends
so the
are
real
cyclical.
nugget in there for anybody who's looking at, anybody who's listening to Gary Vee, tell them that TikTok, there's an influencer for you. Gary Vee, tell them that TikTok is cheap attention real estate right now. The only way to test it is you just got to start making stuff. That's how TikTok works. Just start making stuff and you'll get signal. And if you run out of budget before that test ends, then it wasn't meant to be. But that's how you also should not be spending. Standpoint.
Don't spend a shit ton of budget
to pay the person who's making the videos. But it's also why it's good at advertising, because taking that piece out lets them, the algorithm has an idea of your persona. And that sounds creepy when I say it that way, because it's very nebulous. But like the reason TikTok is so addictive is because I can create a new account from scratch right now, and within 6 days, it's showing me the same creators again, because it can that quickly figure out that I like these stupid Monty Python jokes because I'm on TikTok for 4 minutes in between things, and I'm like, I just want to not think about work for a minute, and absurdist humor does it for me. It figured that out. I've set up 5 different accounts now, and it figured that out within 6-ish days every time. Which on one hand is like creepy. On the other hand, it's kind of like the imaginary ideal of ad delivery that we constantly talk about on this show. So
well, and part of that, the constancy, like the constant delivery, I think it's intentional, but constant, right. And if I think the key, once you're pushing out a bunch of content, when we talk about being data driven, kind of bring this thing full circle in an audience perspective, it's like, don't go for the thing you think you should be getting if it's not what you're getting. Go after the thing where you're winning. You know what I mean? If you're creating if you have a service you want to sell and it's not resonating on TikTok, but some other, goofy, just offhand joke that you push out because you thought it was cool, and that's the thing that's getting all the engagement, well, that probably means you should keep doing the jokes. Don't stop trying to sell the service and just do the jokes.
I think there's a good place to wrap up. Good future tech tips in that section, and I'll leave it at, you should follow the Washington Post account. Regardless of political leanings, the dude who runs the Washington Post TikTok was clearly like, I am now locked in my house. Can I have permission, whoever runs the marketing department, to just make TikToks? And he's really good at it, and he TikToks about making TikToks, and he's just good at it, and it's his job for a very legitimate institution, and it's because occasionally he's delivering the news. Occasionally, he's just making jokes about TikToking. Sometimes it's trolling the fact that we feel like we're living in a parallel universe loop right now because of the pandemic. There's so many layers to the emergence of this stuff, but
it's very meta theatrical. That's the beauty of TikTok.
Right.
You know, it is itself
meta
watching
theatrical
itself.
Transmedia, branded. Anyway, thanks
Growth
everybody
engine.
for hanging out, and thanks for jumping in for this this rollicking version of one of these, Mark.
Absolutely. This was fun.
Thanks to everybody for listening.
To the next one.
Like and subscribe if you want to hear more of this kind of stuff and more of Mark as he picks up host duties, possibly. This is the Data Driven Marketer, sponsored by NetWise. I'm Adam.
I'm Brian.
I've been Mark.
Take it easy, everybody.
See you next time.